You may have your own opinions regarding exactly how we should treat ex felons when re entering society, but one thing we should all agree on is that reconnecting men with their children is for the greater good. My next guest, Charles Daniels, is the CEO of Fathers Uplift, a nonprofit organization that not only reunites ex felons with their children, but helps them adjust to their newfound freedom and keep them out of prison. Here is our conversation. If you were to describe your organization, Fathers Uplift to people, how would you describe your mission?
That's a great question, man. I think simply put, we assist fathers with overcoming any barrier that could prevent them from being engaged in their children's lives and achieving their goals. I think every father wants to be a good father. And so we try to help them do just that.
This is a very narrow endeavor and it's very important. Was there something in your past that personally motivated you to target like fathers?
Prior to starting Fathers Uplift, I didn't like myself, nor did I like my father, right? My father was in my life up until the age of 10 years old, and after that, he was gone. And typically I did what, most children do. In the absence of evidence, you create your own narrative. And that narrative for me was I was the reason why he left. And that I was unlovable and I was worthless. And that resulted to me trying to find that love that I felt I wasn't getting from him in unhealthy ways, from drug use to unhealthy sexual behaviors, and even to a actual suicide attempt, right? One day I had asked God, I said, after that attempt, I asked God, I said, I don't want to feel this way. And if you're going to keep me here on earth, I need to know why my father had been absent from my life. And come to find out through a explorative journey where my mom finally gave me the number to my uncle, which was my father's brother. And my uncle told me everything. And come to find out, my father had been married to his wife for 30 years. So my mother was the outside woman, and I was a result of a marital affair. So that completely freed me, man. And I think in terms of understanding narratives and not necessarily looking at yourself as to blame, it really put things into perspective for me. So when I moved to Boston, I created a project called Fathers Uplift, which was a fellowship project. And I started meeting with these dads who were absent from their kids' lives on a weekly basis. And what I realized from all of them was that although they were not physically present, emotionally they were present for their kids. They wanted to be there. They loved their kids. Matter of fact, they talked about their kids more than they talked about themselves. And it just further confirmed the fact that my father's absence had nothing to do with me. And it kind of gave me more empathy and more love for him, even in his absence, through the narratives of the fathers that I've actually met during that fellowship project process. So Fathers Uplift kind of morphed from that project into what it is today. And to be honest with you, man, when I first started, it was more so like therapy for me. I was in the School of Social Work up here in Boston. I said, you know what? If I'm going to make a difference and do a fellowship project, I may need to do something that addresses my own issues. And I had a lot of daddy issues, man. So that's pretty much the route that I took. And now we're here today.
For people who have different backgrounds and live different lives, it's very easy to look at someone who's served prison time and just put them in a narrow frame of being a criminal. But it's like everybody has a story. And a lot of men or people in general don't choose a life of crime. I mean, you just don't wake up and choose a life of crime. Like there's circumstances and there's reasons why people get on that path. And so you're not just a guy who has compassion and empathy for men being newly released from prison and men that desire reconnecting with their families. Like you hold a PhD, right? And a MSW?
Yeah, man. So PhD is coming soon in the dissertation phase, finishing up. So all but dissertation right now. And I have an MSW and also a master's in divinity. So yeah, man, that's a lot of degrees, bro. But but hey, it is what it is. I love school, man. I really do. I love learning.
How are you guys finding each other? These guys, these men, newly, they're getting released from incarceration. How are you matched?
To be honest with you, bro, it's more so majority of our referrals are word of mouth. This is the thing. We've been doing this work for a long time without a marketing line item on our budget. We didn't spend money on marketing. I think the most we've ever spent was probably like $100. But I think other than that, what we realized with working with men is that if your actions speak loud, they will come to you, right? So we have a lot of fathers who've kind of taken on this responsibility as role models and sharing the word with other people that they know. And it just happens organically, man. I think now we're starting to get more referrals from other institutions like hospitals, other clinics. But mainly it's the dads out there talking about what we do and how we help them. And those other dads come to us that they send to us. So
You mentioned it's working organically. I mean, President Obama
yeah.
knows about you guys. You were on Steve Harvey recently, right?
That is crazy to me, man. It's amazing. So true.
I think I came across you guys. I happened to be reading an article on Good Morning America. So yeah, the word is definitely getting out. So when, in general, and you can throw in caveats any way you like, what's the mental state of these guys when they come to you? Like what stage are they in emotionally?
I did not understand the damage that could take place when you're separated from your child until I had a child, right? When I held my son Clayton for the first time, there was a love, there was a look and a promise that I made to him, even when I held him. And I can only imagine the pain that I would feel as a father if he was separated from me or I wasn't being the man that I've always dreamed of being in his life, right? So when you think about the pain that comes along with having your child removed from you due to life circumstances, that's the pain that those guys are in when they come to the office. A majority of the men that we're serving are not in their children's lives, either physically and or emotionally, right? And that experience is daunting, it's very traumatic. There's not enough research or evidence when we talk about trauma as it relates to a father being separated from his child or not being able to be the man that he wants to be in his child's life, right? And what we realize when those dads come into the room, man, they're at the lowest points that they could possibly be in their lives. I think the lowness that they're in is a reflection of the lowness that any of us would be in if we were to have our kids or a close relative removed from us, right? So talking about building from there, that's the state that they're in when they walk through the door. That's pain, man. That's a pain like no other. And I've never experienced it, but I know that if my son was removed away from me, I would experience a pain that I could not live with.
Are these guys broken? Are they just unsure of their future? Or like what are they telling you? Like what and for the for the men who and I know it's hard to really communicate when you come in, when you're in a vulnerable situation, like what are they saying to you, if you can share that?
It's kind of like this notion, man, if you take away someone's heart and will to live, they don't want to live anymore. So it's kind of like having your heartbeat removed from your chest and being expected to function as a normal adult or to not be angry or to not express your anger or aggression, right? I think they're in that state where on the outside looking in, if you don't understand how it felt to have your kid removed away from you, you would not understand their presentation. So how does that look like? Anger, shame, guilt, embarrassment, first and foremost, embarrassment that they can't be the man that they've imagined in their mind in the first place, right? Combination of those emotions, man. I think, and then you put those emotional issues on top of more so systemic oppression, poverty, housing issues, racism, right? Unhealthy relationships with the child's mother, right? I mean, there's just a whole bunch of things just piled on top of them. And now you bring on COVID, right? I mean, so it's like layered oppression, trying to bury them deep when in fact, they already feel in a horrible place. So, I mean, that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with multiple challenges at once and a lot of emotional barriers, emotional issues. But the most common emotions that we see, shame, guilt, anger, and embarrassment. That's common among all the dads who have come into our office or who want to be re-engaged in their children's lives.
What kind of support are you generally giving these guys?
We've had the commissioner of the state of Massachusetts Department of Public Health come to our office to do a tour because she didn't understand like how we were doing this and getting in contact with all of these Black and brown men in particular and getting them to come in and talk about their feelings and engage in therapy, right? She was baffled. And I remember her coming into the room and we had a bunch of our men around the table. And she asked, what is it about Fathers Uplift? What makes them so amazing? What's different? So you know, I'm thinking, it's a therapy that we provide, it's a coaching that we provide. I assume that they're gonna be like, Charles and his team, they provide great therapy and great services. Let me tell you to help me get what it is that I need. That wasn't even the case, man. The words that came out of one of our dad's mouth, he said, he told the commissioner, he said, when I came to Fathers Uplift, Charles told me something. He said, you know what? He said, if you keep coming to Fathers Uplift, you're gonna fuck around and achieve your dreams. I said, dude, I'm thinking you're going to talk about, I didn't know you was going to tell me, we say things, right? But I think the overall foundation that came out of that question and the answer was, and they all said it, they make us feel important. It isn't what they do, it's how they make us feel. And I think sometimes we get caught up in trying to make people, give people the quality services and, do all of these things for them. But I think when it comes to men, they just want to feel important. They want to feel good about themselves. And that's the secret sauce that Fathers Uplift, to be honest with you. There's millions of therapists with degrees and millions of case managers, right? But I think the secret sauce is, while you're providing the services, are you making people feel important? Because a service without people feeling important is just a service. How can you do both? And I think we do both well. We provide the service, but we also make our dads feel as if they're the most important people on the earth when they are in our lives and when they're with us. And that's what they said, man. Those are the words that came out the dad's mouth, bro. I was surprised. I tell you, I assumed otherwise, but that's what they taught me that day.
I guess for them, just not treating them like a criminal. Mm-hmm. It's like they've served their time, whether, I won't overcomplicate, but it's like, here's a man, or these are men that serve their time, and they get out and they probably expect to be treated less than human or less than a man that they are. And then here you guys are, you're acknowledging like, hey, I see you as a human being, that you have needs and you need help. And I think, man, it's really, I wonder if more people understood how important that was. Because I think the recidivism rate of prior offenders going back to prison is somewhere around 70%. Mm-hmm. So like some of the things that you guys do, like you do the counseling, you also, and I forget the name of the service you guys provide, is you give them a bag of like toiletries to help them transition. What is that? Can you remind me of what that is?
That's a Bass for Dads initiative. Mm-hmm. Bass for Dads, man. My wife envisioned these two programs, the programs that we're known for, the Father's Homecoming program, where you're transitioning fathers from the jail to home. My wife, she used to go into jail with me, and one particular time she went into the jail, and one dad told her, he said, I know today is my release date, but you're not going to sit up here and just let me go back in the community by myself, because if I do, I can tell you I'm going to be back here tomorrow because of what I have to go through, And his dad had a history of substance abuse issues, and right in front of the prison was a hot area for drugs, So my wife was like, well, we're not letting you go by yourself. So she called a Lyft and transported him from the jail back home. They made a few stops, and that was the birth of the Father's Homecoming program. And she also created the Bags for Dads because that same dad had a plastic bag, So you think about leaving, you already have to leave and enter the world after being incarcerated, knowing you're going to be judged and labeled. But give that person a plastic bag and just say, hey, what type of dignity and self-respect, you've already have lost. It becomes even worse when you receive a plastic bag. So thanks to her, she came up with these things, and she realized what these dads need, man. So that's how both of those initiatives started. My wife, Samantha Daniels, really kind of championed those two things, and now we're doing them. So, but yeah, man, it makes a difference. Bag of toiletries make a huge difference to guys who are coming home. Transportation makes a huge difference.
Maybe a lot of us take that for granted. It's like, okay, well, it's just a bag of toiletries worth about $20. But for somebody who hasn't been working for 5, 10, 15 years, I think that's That's like to me that's huge, and it's a huge lift just for somebody to know that you're giving them transportation or that kind of support. So what, like in terms of the journey from getting out of prison to getting reconnected with their families, like how actively involved are you guys with engaging the children and the mothers of the children in putting these people back together?
That's a huge part of the process. I believe that work as it relates to reentry and fatherhood cannot be done without strong women and without women who understand the journey. And even if you don't understand, you're willing to learn about it. And so we have women on our team, man, who understand what it's like to be a single mother, or who understands what it's like to struggle. Because to be honest with you, when we're in those situations, a lot of the women on our team have to do the background work of getting the women who are in the community raising their children while the father's incarcerated, getting them to let their guard down and begin to trust again. There's something in research called maternal gatekeeping, where the mother is trying to protect the child, right? It isn't personal and it isn't necessarily related to the father as to why she may not want to give him another chance. She just wants to make sure the child isn't hurt again, right? So there's a lot of research studying that dynamics of what it looks like when women who have partners incarcerated and those partners are trying to return back into their child's life. What does that look like? And how do they think about that process? It's all about safety for their kids. So there's a lot of work that happens in the background to try to make that journey happen prior to the father being released. Because what we're dealing with, what we're up against is a bunch of pain. Two people who love one another at once. Something happens where the person got distracted, life happens, and now there's still pain there that hasn't been rekindled or discussed. And we come into that like, okay, what do we got to do to put this puzzle back together? So much of the work cannot be successful without the women on our team. It would not be successful at all. So, and that goes along with getting the kids engaged and getting the kids to understand the situation, where it's dad, getting the family to be able to formulate an answer that is child friendly. It's a lot that goes into it.
How far in advance are you guys coordinating, these reunions, or how far in advance are you coordinating, the support for these guys prior to their release?
On average, it takes about 3 months to get a good foundation established prior to the father's release, right? Our standard practice is at least 3 months. Anything less than 3 months, we have to kind of do more work on the back end. But our great foundation is 3 months of prep work prior to actual release and prior to establishing that full engagement.
Setting a roadmap. That's smart.
Yeah, man. A part of it, to be honest with you, man, is that when guys go in, they're in for a while, but when they come out, all they know is what they've done in the past, right? So we try to create like an underground railroad. If there's any issues or anything that they would like, how can we establish our partnerships and our connections to make sure that they are already aware of who this person is before he's released and what his interests are. We kind of have like a foundation set. So thanks to all of our partners who really help us kind of cultivate and develop that process for men returning home. But it takes a lot of groundwork. That's why I love Harriet Tubman, man. She kind of set the foundation for the Underground Railroad, and we think we have to be Harriet Tubman's, man, to help dads come home safely.
What are some of the challenges you guys have as an organization in serving all of these men?
I think we're still up against the expectations that society has for men, right? To be strong, to provide for your family, to be close to perfect, to not show any emotion. There's still people who have that in their system. We have a whole bunch of systems that come together to create these definitions of what men should be. And on the outside looking in, if you are a man, you're going to have those same expectations. And if you're not a man, or you are growing up, becoming a man, those expectations are going to be instilled in you. So everyone is wrestling with these expectations, trying to make sense of the world through the eyes of traditional manlyhood, right? So much of the challenges is man is trying to break away from that standard definition of what a man should be. I think, like, for example, one example would be, providing money or providing a roof for your family's head isn't the only way of providing. You could spend time with your family, and it doesn't necessarily have to cost you a dime, right? There's ways of displaying and showing love that doesn't necessarily require you to spend money, because some men get stuck in spending money or having money to be able to do for their families. So we're wrestling up against some of those standard definitions to help our men create new ones. And creating a new way of living and a new way of believing is a completely whole different challenge on its own, right? We're asking them to relearn what they have had before and to create a definition that they can live by that can keep them free, both physically and emotionally. I mean, that's like learning a new language, right? So that's a challenge that we're up against. I mean, not only are we trying to help them learn a new language, we're also training social workers and training therapists across the country to help them learn a new language and have a different perspective as when they're working with these men. So it's happening on both sides of the curve, man. But those, I would say, those are the most prevalent challenges, getting people to think about and see these men in a different way, but also get men to see themselves in a different way and give them an opportunity to create their own ending and write their own definitions of what they want to be as a man.
What are some of the most difficult scenarios in terms of the kind of guys you guys serve as? Like, I can imagine anybody who's had a substance abuse problem is very challenging to service. There's guys who were maybe abused as young men and that still follows them. Like, does anything come to mind with that?
Our men are always experiencing more than one challenge. It's not just one. I think it's easy to deal with one challenge, right? But when you have to deal with multiple challenges, we find ourselves dealing with those all the time. So for example, housing issues and substance use, those are common. There's a common relationship that we see often, right? So if you use it, it's going to be hard for you to get public housing, right? And sustain public housing. So how do you kind of work on both sides of the spectrum? I think another one is, legal issues and navigating court. If majority of our men, they don't like court systems. I think you think about our community in general, the court is a scary place to be, right? So how do you navigate that while you're trying to work on your mental health? It's like going to court all the time is re-traumatizing yourself every time you got to step foot in the court. So that's a common situation too. So we ask you to work on your own trauma and provide support to you, but also partner with you in dealing and navigating with some of these traumatic systems, court, and also Department of Revenue, child support system, having thousands of dollars in arrearages, tons of debt while you're in car. So in Massachusetts, I'm not sure if you know this, but if you don't call the Department of Revenue, which is the governing body of child support in the state of Massachusetts, when you are incarcerated, they will continue to charge you your child support payments while you're incarcerated, if they don't know that you've been incarcerated. But the question is, how many of us, when we get arrested, think that we need to call Department of Revenue? You're not thinking about that. You're trying to get out of jail. So you end up thinking about, how can I get out of jail for 7 or 8 months and you're still in jail and you didn't call Department of Revenue yet. What happens? Your child support payments increase and you leave jail with thousands of dollars of arrearages. So a lot of guys, they come home and they're trying to get their lives together, but they're also trying to get that debt that they receive while in jail wiped off. And that's even a challenging process in itself. So it's kind of like, it's always like, it's not just one thing for these guys, man, and it's unfortunate. It's always 2 or 3 things at once hitting them at the same time. They're currently trying to readjust to what is occurring in their life. It's one thing after another.
As soon as I asked that question, it dawned on me, like, man, you captured it perfectly. It's never just one thing. And it goes back to empathy. And I wonder how much that empathy is being shared between the policymakers, the law enforcement and whatnot. Like, do you feel like, from the city and the state, any of your city and state partners in the government or what have you, do you feel like they're starting to realize that a greater level of support is needed?
I'm the least political person. I hate politics. I can't stand it, right? But we have had partners in the city who really value the work that we do, like Councilor Andrea Campbell, who's over the district where our office is located. really loves us, and she understands the importance of a father and reentry and mass incarceration, the effects of mass incarceration from a personal standpoint. So you have individuals like her who are taking our mission under their wing and really making sure that we are positioned to get more support. I think our governor, Charlie Baker, is doing a great job with the state, right? Really just giving nonprofits and organizations opportunities to get access to funding, right? Also, Mayor Marty Walsh is also trying to diversify funding streams for nonprofits and businesses in our city. I think they're managing issues on a larger level, but at the same time, it doesn't feel as if we're getting lost in their leadership as they are managing these things. I can't say me being the least political person kind of keeps me disconnected to a certain extent, but a lot of people who are involved with us or who are partnered with us on a deeper level is seeking us out more than we're seeking them out. I tell people all the time, man, when you are on the ground and you're working, you don't really have time to look up sometimes. It's like you're just doing the work. You're trying to serve these dads. That's kind of how majority of our team is, man. We're on the ground. We're doing the work. And we don't look up as often, because the work is so taxing and our dads need our attention. But I can say that the will and the heart to want to do right from a state and local level in Massachusetts and Boston is present. I can't say that. So they want to make a difference.
Let's talk about impact. Let's talk about some of the success stories, man. I just don't want to focus on, the everything that leads up to them getting out. Like can you share like some of the success stories, the things that warm your heart, the things that remind you like, hey, Charles, man, we're doing good things for human beings. Let's throw the identifier as being an ex-con or an ex-felon. Like, you're doing great things for human beings. What are the success stories?
There's two stories that stand out to me the most, man. The first story is with one of the first fathers that we served a couple of years ago. He's been with me for almost 9 years. And he's still with me. He's a young father. When I first met him, man, he was in DYS and he was just coming home from being in the system and, didn't have his kids in his life. He had 2 kids. There were some issues that he was having with the child's mother. He wasn't able to see his kids. I mean, everything that you could imagine going wrong for a young man who just came home from the system went wrong for him. And when I look at him coming to see me on a consistent basis, man, and just being involved in our services as we continue to grow, I mean, he's seen Fathers Uplift at every stage of our success, man. And when I look at him now, he has his kids back, full custody. I mean, look at that. I mean, young man come home and now has full custody of his kids after not having seen his kids in a long time. Has an apartment in Boston, and now is a construction worker. And throughout that process, he had some bumps, but at the same time, man, he stayed consistent. And when I think about people like Javon, man, it just makes my heart cry because, I realized that, Fathers Uplift played a major role in his life, and he played a major role in Fathers Uplift's life. He let us know that change is possible and that everyone wants to do right, even when the cards are stacked against them. And just to see his kids' eyes when they come into the office, man, that love is present, man. They're so happy to have daddy home. There's a long time when the kids were like, I want my daddy, and, daddy wasn't home and they didn't know where daddy was. But now it's like, daddy's in the room next door, and daddy's going to make sure that although he has full custody, he's going to make sure that we get a chance to see mom too, like really creating boundaries and setting the foundation for for his children's mother, a foundation that wasn't set for him, like really being fair, really making sure that the kids are safe and doing what he has to do for his family. But when you think about his lifestyle, man, in his past, man, he really came through history of trauma. Like when he came home from the system, everything that he told me, I knew why he ended up in the system in the first place. I mean, you think witnessing abuse and a whole bunch of traumatic issues, man, he experienced it all. So shout out to Javon, man. I'm so proud of you, man. So proud of that man. And I love him, man, like he's my own. But he makes us proud, man. He's been with me for almost 9 years. So
I'm sure you're seeing the evolution from the time these guys get out into the, get released into the, into public, to healing, to building a rapport with each other.
Things change when a father is back in his child's life. Like we had a dad who was absent for a while, man, due to false allegations. Um, they tried to label him a sexual predator due to someone stating that he was touching them. So this dad spent 2 years of fighting the court, walking around with an ankle bracelet on his leg, man, and really just stressed out. Son was removed from him and placed into foster care. This happened for 2 years. His son's grades dropped drastically. There was a lot of fights in school. And in the process of his son being impacted on the flip side, he was impacted personally, man, to the extent where he was getting ready to take the plea. They told him to take the plea. He was getting ready to confess to something that he didn't do. But towards the end of that 2-year segment, man, and him coming to Father's Uplift consistently, you know what happened, man? What happened was that the family that made the false allegations went to court and stated that they lied. Now, we told him that he is not pleading to anything that he didn't do. And he said, Charles, Father's Uplift is the reason why I didn't take that plea. But imagine if he would have took that plea. His son would have continued to be in foster care. He would have took a plea to something that he did not do. And it would have been another child who would end up growing up, perhaps engaging in unhealthy coping mechanisms himself, continuing to go along that path. And his father would have been separated from him. So shout out to our dad, man, who didn't give in to that situation. I mean, it's different situations like that. The child benefited. Now the child's doing great. He's getting ready to go to college. The world changes when fathers are involved. I mean, there's tons of research that shows that, man. I mean, fathers not involved, kids are more likely to engage in substance use, early pregnancy, become incarcerated, be poor, right? But the opposite happens when they're involved. High performance and education. I mean, the whole 9 yards, right? So, I mean, we can't take for granted the importance of dads, man. Not only does the research say it, we actually see it day to day.
I think I told you, I'm from South Central LA. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my peers growing up, like the concept of when I would hear my peers say, that their father lived somewhere else, like that was foreign to me. I was like, like 8 or 9 years, like, huh, what? Okay. It's like, but my father, I think he worked like 12 hours plus a day. I didn't see him a lot because he didn't get home till like 8:30 at night. And even when he came home, I only saw him for a few minutes before I had to go to bed. But just knowing that he was around, big difference. Just having his presence, just seeing his keys or his wallet laying around and seeing that truck in the driveway, man, it made like a huge, huge difference. It sounds like you just don't get these guys and just send them off in a year. It sounds like once you're a part of Father's Uplift, you're like a member for life. Like, would that be a true statement?
I don't believe in discharge. The state says you have to discharge. We abide by the state rules, but that dad is a part of the family. We're still connected. I don't believe in being disconnected. I'm from the South. And, in the South, your family was your best friends. That's kind of how I was raised. So if you come into this family, we're going to treat you like family. And we're going to keep you like family. You're not just a client that we're just, benefiting off of. It's none of that, right? You are a father that we love and that we appreciate, and you're a part of our family for life. So that's a perfect statement.
Like, are some of your clients who, get to a level or they get to a state where they're doing better, do you guys have them in turn mentor incoming clients into your program?
Matter of fact, one of our coaches now is a dad who was a former recipient of services. And now he's head of our youth enrichment program, and just had a baby boy and just doing great work. Shout out to George, who's doing this thing at Father's Uplift. So yeah, that's a part of the model, man, that peer-to-peer model that you have benefited and you are returning it to those who are currently receiving services.
And you also have something that I read called the Youth Enrichment Services, where I guess the focus with this is on the younger boys. Tell us a little bit about that.
We're located in Dorchester, and when I started this journey, I wasn't necessarily thinking about children growing up in households without their fathers. And So we started to get a bunch of single mothers, grandmothers bringing young men and women to our office and say, hey, I don't know what to do with this kid. They're acting up in school. Their father's not involved. I need help. So the Youth Enrichment Services was established after an overwhelming request for help from women in our community, strong women in our community that are raising children by themselves. So currently they meet every Saturday. Prior to COVID, now we're working virtually, but they meet every Saturday. There's a variety of mentoring and field trip outings and cultural opportunities that they engage in, from tutoring to visiting places that they would not have visited otherwise, in the presence of a father figure who oversees that program. So that growth has been cultivated by fathers themselves. They've been introduced to new things by fathers. So, I would say that the Youth Enrichment Program was not created to take the place of a father. It was created for us to stand in the gap for that father until he returns. So we're all about standing in the gap, but also supporting fathers. So our youth are benefiting from that, man. And, we get a very good response from that program.
I still have a relationship with a young man I met through Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and it's been going on 15 years. And
wow.
But I've also seen I met him when I met his peers, some of his little buddies, and man, the impact. I mean, I don't want to make this about me at all, but like anytime, when I compare what was once a young man who's had some good presence of role models in their lives compared to those who didn't, it just makes life so much more challenging and difficult to get these young men in a healthy place. So that's great that you have that to augment people's lives. So you mentioned Corona, man. How much of a monkey wrench has the pandemic thrown into your program, and like how are you guys having to adjust your services to this?
It's interesting. Much of our work was in person prior to COVID. Now it's all remote. We've also been really just listening to the requests and the needs of our population. So this week, along with a partnership that we have with Stand Together Foundation and the Family Independence Initiative, we were able to give away $25,000 in cash assistance. So, one thing that we realized here in the state of Massachusetts, Department of Revenue is garnishing refund checks of dads who are currently on child support. So you're not getting that refund, or a significant amount is going to be taken away. I think that may be the national rule. So we wanted to make sure that our dads who were connected or who were impacted in that way had some type of cash assistance. So shout out to our partners for helping us make that happen. We were able to give over 50 fathers and families cash assistance this week. So things like that, man, really trying to find how can we navigate this curve that's currently taking place, man. People are being laid off. People are being affected. Our community that we're currently in Dorchester has one of the highest cases of COVID in Boston. Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, and Hyde Park. I mean, those areas are impacted by COVID, as well as Brockton in the state of Massachusetts. They have a high volume of cases, man, in the state of Massachusetts. So, and predominantly these communities are communities of color. People who are being impacted the most are people of color. Now, taking into consideration the liquor stores that are situated in those communities and, the violence, they're already impacted. COVID is just one layer, another layer of oppression that we're dealing with, man. So, for the most part, we're just trying to continue to be there for them, be more aggressive with our check-ins on a weekly basis, and just do our work remotely. But also, if we can engage in partnerships to provide resources to them, we take advantage of those partnerships. So, but yeah, it's been a monkey wrench. But one thing too, I tell people, man, Black folks are used to struggle. So, people look, some organizations like, hey, COVID, I'm like, dude, my wife, we've been struggling for a long time. We don't have no $1 million endowment. We don't got nobody just throwing cash our way. Listen, we got to make the pennies work. So, we've always been struggling prior to COVID, and we're struggling now. But guess what? Those farms are going to get served. So that's kind of how we look at it.
And I'm trying to resist the temptation of steering this conversation in a different direction. But you hit on something key, man. People of color. And I think you and I can only speak being Black men, we can only speak from a point of view from Black people. Yeah, the pandemic is making things difficult for us. But having said that, it's like when you've been up against the wall financially, when you've looked danger in the face, that sort of primes you to deal with struggles later in life. And it, for somebody who's probably had a life of privilege or who's lived with a high level of comfort, is, it could be that the pandemic is more jarring for that person versus versus someone who was living in a third world country, or someone who, I don't know, just had a whole, just a number of different challenges. So that's like, it's an interesting observation you had. Like how big of a role is the church community playing in your world?
I can say, man, that I attend a church called Morning Star Baptist Church, and Bishop Borders is doing great work. To the extent of their response to COVID, I'm not that familiar with it, but I do know, given the type of man he is and his leadership, I'm pretty sure that they're doing a lot of work for our constituents. Although I'm not familiar with it, I know that he's following steps of God in that particular area. But I'm not really connected to the church community, man, that much. My wife and I, we go to church when we can, and we listen to the word from our pastor. But more importantly, man, I would say that we try not to mix business with our worship. We try to keep the two separate. So, and in Boston, there's a separation between the church community and between the mental health community. I think there's synergy there, but no one has really figured out what that looks like. Faith-based versus mental health. How can you combine them? There's synergy, and I think there's a perfect partnership, but everyone's trying to figure that out. But me personally, I try not to get the two involved. But for the most part, I would say that I know the churches are doing something for their constituents and people who are attending their churches, just not familiar with the depth of those interventions.
In terms of the future, like, do you guys have a vision of how your organization looks, 5-10 years from now?
We're in the process of finishing a strategic plan. The goal is definitely to go national. We want offices in different locations. We definitely want to be in areas where there's a need for our services. Inner city areas, especially with a high percentage of fatherlessness, we definitely want to be in those areas. We haven't identified what areas specifically at this time, but hopefully after this strategic plan, we'll have a better sense of how that looks. But the goal is definitely to be national. We have a lot of national interest, and I think there's a national need. There's even an international need and international interest. So we want to be able to be of support to those individuals in those countries and those states. So I think that's the magic. How we're going to do it is a great question, because we're trying to figure that out as well.
If I can ask, what kind of support are you guys getting in terms of finance? Like, I know you have small donors like myself. Are you, you getting grants from the state, federal grants? Like, how can people best support you in that?
As a clinic, we are able to receive insurance reimbursement. That's one funding stream. Philanthropy is another. Individual donors is another. Our goal is to strengthen our individual donor base a little bit more. We believe that there are individuals out there who want to be connected in more, in a larger way. We haven't been good at giving individuals opportunities to, donate and feel connected, but we are trying to do a better job at doing that. But for the most part, I think if individuals want to help, man, definitely donations and support in that regard would be very helpful. We also love insight. I think educational insight as it relates to specific projects that we are trying to do will be greatly beneficial to us as well. Sign up on our newsletter, and just if we have a call for support, utilizing your expertise, if it fits within your expertise to support us, will be greatly beneficial. But I think for the most part, due to the turn of COVID, things are never going to be the same again. And we believe that there's even a larger opportunity to get people more involved. without physically having to be present. So that virtual platform and being able to explore opportunities that way is something that we're looking into as well.
When you get a shout out from somebody like former President Obama and you get a request to be on Steve Harvey Show, like how surprised are you when those kind of things happen?
For me, man, it's kind of like I get numb, and I really don't necessarily understand what's happening around me. I just kind of get to the point where I'm the type of person that if something happens to me, I'm going to go forward with it and not think about it. And I'll think about it after it happened. So I'm still thinking about, a couple months later, the shout out from President Obama and being on the Steve Harvey Show. Still thinking about that. I'm like, did that actually happen? Like I'm there, but I'm not there. You know what I'm saying? Like kind of disassociating a little bit. So, but very surprising. Like the shout out from President Obama, we didn't know that was happening until we woke up and we seen it on social media. He has a way of surprising you, man. So President Obama definitely surprised us that they shout out to President Obama. Steve Harvey, same thing. I did not know we were going to be able to connect that way and that he was going to make a donation and really invite us up to his camp. Still surprised by that. But I guess we're in the world of surprises, man. You never know what's going to happen until it happens.
If we could educate people on the needs of these men coming out of prison, regardless of race or socioeconomic background, what's one piece of insight we can give these people in understanding these men and understanding their needs?
We have to stay off our high horses. I think sometimes we are looking at people and judging them. And at the same time, we forget some of the things that we've done to people in the past. So I think we have to eliminate this notion of self-righteousness and embrace people and their imperfections with open arms. I think that's what our men who are coming home need more than anything. They need to feel important. They need to feel good about themselves, despite what they've done that took them behind bars. And there's things that we've done that we should have been behind bars, but we're not. So not forgetting those things too, right? I think when we think about what do you need to do to make sure that guys coming home can feel a little bit better at home is to be humble and realize that you're no better than them. And I think as long as we all can stay on this kind of evil kill suspension, like not getting too high on ourselves and not becoming self-righteous, the more of a difference we can make to anybody coming home from incarceration. Like I said before, man, the things that they appreciate the most when asked by the commissioner of the Department of Public Health was, it wasn't the services, how we made them feel. And I think you can make people feel better when you don't believe you're hyped too much, believe that you're better. So I think for me, that's kind of like the foundational advice I would give, man, to people who could be more open and responsive to men coming home, is to realize that you're no better than them, that we're all the same, and that what they need more than anything is to feel important. And the resources would be the icing on the cake. But how can you make them feel important?
It's all about community.
Yeah.
You know, and in terms of awareness of people being able to find your organization, whether, there's people in the community are getting awareness. If by chance somebody on the inside is listening to this at some point, how do people find you, whether it's social media and whatnot? And
you can definitely contact us via email, info@fathersuplift.org. You also can visit our website, www.fathersuplift.org. On Twitter, you can find us at Fathers Uplift, Instagram, Fathers Uplift, Facebook, Fathers Uplift. And you also can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, Charles Clayton Daniels Jr., the whole government, because there's a lot of Charles Daniels. And on Instagram, Dr. Daniels Jr., and Twitter. So, man.
Thank you so much, man. Like I really see the value and importance in your organization's work. And I can imagine the number of lives you guys have had a very positive impact on. From me, thank you for that. And I'm over here on the West Coast, and I know that exponentially, man, you guys are positively impacting lives. So I appreciate you and thank you for that.
Thank you, man. Definitely want to come to the West Coast, man.
Hey, you do it, man. When this is all behind us, we will have to get together at some point. I haven't been to Boston yet, but it's on one of my destinations to get to. So definitely, man, we'll link up at some point.
Sounds good, brother. Take care. Thank you for your support too. It means a lot to us.